All gone pretty well for Tuchel so far. First hint of controversy, you mentioned it briefly, Callum Hudson-Odoi. He was, substituted, happens occasionally, but then perhaps the public condemnation of him after the game as well enhanced on that.
Yeah, that's what brought that kind of it put petrol on the fire when it was fire was burning slightly at the time. And I think listen, Callum Hudson-Odoi, I think the most important part in that is his reaction, how he reacts. He can sulk. He can be somebody who sits there and says, listen, that's been embarrassing, the humiliation, and I'm going to work hard and roll my sleeves up. Or he can sit there and maybe think, actually, he's picked on me because I've been one of his better players, and he's showing the rest of the squad that no one's immune from being criticised and being pulled off if you're not working the way that you want to. But listen, I've spoken to people at the training ground at Chelsea, and they said that his reaction has been absolutely perfect. Given what's happened, and they expected that. And so hopefully he plays tonight and he goes and puts in a performance.
Where do you stand on that incident, Steve?
I thought Callum Hudson-Odoi was very unlucky, actually. I think we have a stigma in England that if a substitute gets substituted, it's, the worst thing that can happen. Maybe he may have done it many times in France, Thomas Tuchel, or maybe in Germany. I'm not entirely sure. But when I looked at his performance, it didn't jump out at me that, this is so bad, I have to drag him off because, and then as Rio said, fair enough, that was bad enough, but then to come out publicly afterwards...
It's more the public thing after, isn't it?
I thought it was uncalled for, to be very honest. He's still only a young lad. Yeah. He's still learning his trade. I don't think his performance warranted that kind of reaction after the game, to be very honest.
Joe, I'm reliably informed that you weren't a substitute and came off, but after 26 minutes of a certain game against Fulham, Jose Mourinho hooked you.
Yes, me and Sean Wright-Phillips. Yeah. I think this is a different situation because I'd had history with Jose. He knew he could. He knew it was just one of them games, Gareth. We were playing a game, and you're looking over after 20 minutes, and me and Sean Wright-Phillips at the same time, we whipped us both off. So at least it was both of us going down the tunnel, and it was like it was a statement he'd made. Yeah. We both wasn't probably at the top of our game at the time.
How did it make you feel?
Dreadful. Dreadful, yes.
What was the score at the time, mate, if you don't mind me asking?
0-0.
0-0?
0-0.
Wow.
It was one of them you don't expect, and it come out of the blue. It's interesting because me and Sean reacted very different. Sean went into the dressing room, and he was quite calm about it, and I was trashing the place, and I lost the plot, so angry. But like Callum, I calmed down by the end of the game, and then responded well, and I think... there was a little condemnation in the press, but we lost the game 1-0. Yeah. Which, as you come off, you think, well, I've still got a chance to get back in this team. But this was very different. I was at the game, I did it, and there was nothing wrong with Callum's performance. And he was brought on to give a bit of spark that hadn't come yet. But when you're a moments player, when you're a winger and you've got to take a risk, he lost the ball a few times. So I think Tuchel, Chelsea were in such control of the game. I think he could take Callum off, replace him, still win the game and send a message, because I think he admires Callum as a player, and I think that was a message to the other players that we will not stand. This is the standard. When you come on, you have to impact it, and how that develops with Callum over the next few weeks and how he progresses as a player is purely down to him.
I think another big thing is we can sit here and try and dissect Callum's performance, but none of us actually know what was said in that change room or the instructions he was actually giving him that he didn't carry out. It might not have been anything to do with being on the ball at all, or
he said it was about his body language,
intensity,
etc. Second press.
And if we was privy to that conversation, we might have a little bit more to give in terms of the argument.
Do you know what, Ree? I always find these decisions come from managers who don't necessarily have a footballing background, like Jose, like Tuchel, because the feeling for a player sometimes when he's not a robot. Callum might have been, his head might have not been in the game, but when you're a moments player, it only takes one moment of brilliance from him. Yeah. So an ex-player, I think, would have allowed him to just work himself into the game, but Tuchel he's made his decision. He has to stand by it now. Yep.